Did Terry tell me you just launched or went back into training full time?
Yeah, I guess it's been a little over a year ago. I had been training, for many years, but I also worked at PetSafe Premier and then PetSafe full time. And then about a year and a half ago, I decided I wanted out of that whole corporate scene. And I had been seeing clients on the side during all that time and training on the weekends, and just decided to make that my full-time gig.
What came first, working in the pet industry or training as an animal behavior consultant and dog trainer?
Definitely working in the pet industry came first.
Oh, and what was your role there?
So originally, I had been a gymnastics coach for about 15 years. I grew up in the gym, and I didn't really transition out, I guess. I just transitioned from being a gymnast to coaching gymnast. And then I'd always been very interested in animals and loved dogs and had dogs and did, training classes with my own dogs, that sort of thing. I transitioned into that industry after I was out of gymnastics and wanted kind of to do something different. And it was really hilarious because one day I was surfing the net looking for a new gentle leader for my dog. So I was familiar with that product, and I was looking for a different color other than black or red, which was what was sold at PetSmart at the time. And I discovered that that company happened to be here just outside of Richmond. So, and they made them in like 20 colors. And I was like, I want all those colors. So I drove down there one day, not realizing they didn't have a storefront, and walked in. And it was hilarious because the receptionist said to me, "Oh, are you here for the interview?" And I said, "Well, no, but what are they looking for?"
Wow,
And I ended up applying while I was there, and ended up actually getting the job in their customer care team. And I was on that team for about 3 months when a trainer who was working there, who ended up being my mentor, was hiring an assistant. And I had already taken some training classes from her locally, so I was familiar with her. And she hired me as her assistant and was amazingly instrumental in allowing me to pursue behavior education. She sent me to conferences and webinars, and all the education I could soak up, she was willing to help me do. She let me apprentice training in her classes for years, and just kind of really grew me into that position. And then eventually when she left, she basically was like, "I've been hiring my replacement, so here she is." I took her position with Premier Pet Products
Oh, okay.
as the training and behavior education manager.
Oh,
So
okay.
we were kind of responsible for everything from helping with input on new products. We wrote instruction manuals. We helped on photo shoots. So anything that was related to animal behavior in terms of the products or anything we were doing with them, we were heavily involved in those sort of things.
Do you remember the first dog and clients that you worked with when you started back again full-time training?
Oh, yes, I do. I was very, very fortunate to get a referral from another Karen Pryor Academy graduate trainer who lives here in town. We're very fortunate here in Richmond. There are several of us. And she referred me a client that she just couldn't take on at the time. And they had a new lab puppy. And they ended up not only being my first clients for my own training business, but they've been amazing clients, and I still see them on a regular basis. And they have this wonderful lab who I saw grow from a puppy into this sweet adolescent boy, and he's a big old goofy lab.
Do you have something in particular that you specialize in, or you sort of handle everything?
Um, I do a little bit of everything, but I definitely see most of my clients on veterinary referrals from, we have a veterinary behavior resident here in town who's finishing up her behavior residency. I see clients with her in clinic and for her outside of her clinic. So I see a lot of dogs with reactivity issues, aggression issues, um, everything from a little bit of separation anxiety, but mostly reactivity and aggression. And then I also have on the flip side of that, I have this kind of thriving puppy clientele for people who are looking for really custom in-home training for their puppies.
Back to puppies, it seems like doggy daycare is becoming more and more popular. And if someone was looking for a reputable doggy daycare facility to maybe leave their puppy or their adopted pet at, even if it's just for a day or a week while they go off on vacation, what should people look for, or what maybe are good signs on somebody's website that folks should be looking for, or if they visit the facility, maybe what should they be looking for?
Well, I definitely think the first order of business is to visit that facility. I think any reputable doggy daycare training facility, anything like that, should definitely let you come in and observe what they do. It should never be behind the scenes. So I think that's super important. Other than that, I definitely want to look for a smaller ratio of caregivers to the dogs that are in their care, and some division of dogs in terms of not just looking in terms of size of dog, because while that can be important, the temperament and the play style of the individual dogs is important too. So I usually ask facilities how they sort of divide dogs up into play groups and what type of breaks they allow the dogs, because I think having the dogs kind of, people take them to daycare and you want them to be active and play because, they want to bring home the dog that's not full of energy. And I understand that. But it's sort of like if you took a group of 4-year-olds and took them to their own daycare and they played all day and they come home not only exhausted and tired, but also grumpy and not in such a good mood. So I think having some play breaks are definitely important. So I look for that in a facility. And also to see if they are, with Pet Sitters International or any of the organizations that are kind of doing some more work on taking that industry and kind of upping the level and quality of care.
I know from speaking with you before, you're fairly involved with IAABC. Can you just explain briefly what that is?
Absolutely. IAABC, and that's a lot of letters. It stands for International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants. And we are an organization. I'm currently serving on their board as the vice president. It's an organization, we have different membership levels because we believe wholeheartedly in bringing people into the organization so they can acquire additional education in animal behavior, so that hopefully eventually they will become certified they can be certified in dog, parrot, horse, or cat. So we have those 4 divisions. And each division's certification requires a certain amount of continuing education, as well as reference letters from colleagues and veterinarians, and then an extensive application process that includes a good number of case studies in more complex behavior issues, things that we talked about like aggression issues, separation anxiety, and things of that nature. So it's sort of like I encourage trainers who really want to get more into behavior to check out the organization because it definitely will help you grow into a behavior consultant, which I think is kind of a level, a different level than just being a trainer. I consider myself a trainer and I love training, but there's definitely a difference between working with animals that need basic manners, you know, to greet at the door or to settle during dinner or to sleep in their crate versus dogs that have complex behavior issues that might be working with veterinary professionals and be on medications and things of that nature.
IAABC have sort of a positive ethos that members must abide to, and
They
on top of
do.
that, if a trainer
Thank
has
you.
IAABC listed on their website, that's a good thing to look for, correct?
It is a good thing to look for. We are part of 3 organizations that have recently um, uh, decided to adhere to the same standard code of ethics, as well as a standard of and quality of care called LIMA, which is least invasive, minimally aversive. And attached to LIMA, I won't go into all the details because we could talk about LIMA for hours, but it's basically applying a humane hierarchy so that we're starting with things like making sure the basic needs are met for the animal, looking at management of the animal and their environment, and then looking at things like training them new skills with positive reinforcement so they learn what to do, and replacing what not to do with what to do. And then we start looking at some of the other things that can be applied, but we want to apply them very carefully in a systematic way and making sure that we're getting feedback as needed from other trainers and behavior consultants to make sure we're absolutely giving them the most humane and effective behavior care that we can.
If I just brought home a new puppy, what's maybe the best way or the steps that I want to go through as I try to teach my puppy to sit?
Oh, to sit. Okay. Sit's interesting. I think sit is an interesting behavior because we often think we teach puppies to sit when actually they can usually figure out how to sit all on their own. So I like to capture sitting. So I will often, but I do think sit is a great behavior to have my clients work on because it's such a simple behavior that most dogs are eventually going to do anyway. It's a great way for my clients to learn fantastic clicker marker skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I will have set them up in a quiet location and say, just hang out with your puppy. Have some treats and your clicker, or if you're using a marker word like yes, be ready with that. And just kind of hang out with your puppy. And as they kind of get bored, and if they sit at any point in time, click that or mark it with a word like yes, and then reinforce it. And it's the simplest exercise ever, but it teaches 2 really important things. It teaches the puppy that reinforcement comes from you, and it can be really simple and teaches the puppy, it doesn't really teach the puppy, but the puppy learns that they can make reinforcement happen. They have some control over their situation, which is really important. It also teaches my clients that they can have fantastic clicker or marker skills with very little effort. And it shows them how beautifully that process can work. And that's usually how I hook my clients on clicker training, because they're like, I taught him how to sit in like 1 session. It was amazing. And I'm like, yeah, the process, it can be that amazing.
That's
For both of
brilliant
them.
advice. And I would have to guess that that exercise probably has 100% success rate.
It really does, because if the puppy knows you have treats, and if you have treats, even if they're not out and about, the puppy knows. I mean, dogs have this amazing sense of smell. They know it's there. They're going to pay some attention to you, especially if you're in a quiet location and you're the most interesting thing in the room. Like, set yourself up to be successful. And then once the puppy learns that, oh, wait, you mean all I have to do is sit and you're going to click and give me a reinforcement? This is so easy. And then once you have that established between the client and the puppy, then training more complex behaviors becomes super simple for both of them. And seeing them both succeed that way is just one of the things I'm the most passionate about, because I love helping my clients really figure out how to communicate with their dog, whether that dog's a puppy or an older animal.
Mm-hmm. And you said, or you mentioned that you get a lot of vet referrals. Do you find that the vets in your area are open and receptive to the behavior information that professional trainers like yourself possess?
I definitely think that's a mixed bag. I think we're definitely seeing more veterinarians and veterinary professionals, whether that's vet techs or practice managers, be more open to working with trainers. But the part that I find exciting about that is it's going beyond that model that used to be where you went into the vet clinic as a trainer and you asked the receptionist, hey, can I put some of my business cards on your counter? And then you left, right? And they didn't really know that much about you outside of what might be on your business card or your brochure that they allowed you to leave there. And now we're starting to develop closer relationships with those people. We're inviting them to come into our puppy classes, or we're giving them maybe a discount on a first session so they can actually see what we do and the scientific approach that we are taking to training and how we can be an important part of the team for their client and for themselves. So we're definitely seeing a change there. I love working with the veterinary community because I do think it has to be a team approach for the client to have the best outcome that they can have. Whether that's for a puppy who might just need to learn how to be well acclimated to the veterinary clinic, from simple things like coming in and learning to get up on the scale by themselves, or confidently going into the treatment room. We do practice with a lot of cooperative care, teaching puppies what steps it will be as they get vaccinations or have their temperature taken, or just the simple act of handling them during an exam. We make that more comfortable for puppies. Then that vet can really build a client for life, and we can be an important part of that team in that regard for the veterinarian. So yeah, the whole kind of model of working with the veterinary community is definitely changing for trainers, and we have to be willing to kind of change with it and get to know those veterinarians. I always tell people, as a veterinarian, I wouldn't expect you to refer to me if you don't know what I'm doing with your clients. But on the flip side of that, I wouldn't refer to veterinarians that I don't know well too. So I feel like it's my professional responsibility, and it's their professional responsibility to check each other out and learn about each other and get to know each other professionally and what we do, so that we can create fantastic teams for our clients.
And in terms of building partnerships, does IAABC offer any behavior workshops geared towards veterinarians?
Yes and no. I don't know that we specifically have ones that are just for veterinarians, but we definitely work closely with the veterinary behavior community. So we have several veterinary behaviorists who are IAABC members. They are speakers at our conference. They consult on our educational offerings that we have online. And so we work closely with them to make sure we're offering the best in science. A lot of our educational offerings actually have RACE, continuing education credits, attached to them, which is important for veterinarians. That's one of their continuing education approval programs, is called RACE. And so most of our educational offerings are covered under that, so they can come and take behavior offerings at our website or at one of our conferences and get continuing education credits for veterinarians and other veterinary professionals like veterinary technicians as well. So yeah, we work very closely with them to provide that, because we need education from them, but they also need behavior components that we can help offer.